Welcome, Rotarians and guests, to our Monday meeting. It looks like we're going to have some stragglers coming in again. Please remember patience for the orange barrels. Today we're going to be hearing from Dr. Isaac Schiefer and our own Julia Faulkner Pechlivanos about Alzheimer's. And before we get to that, I'm going to invite Butch Kruger to the mic to give us a reflection, and Casey Holk will lead us in the pledge.
Let us pray. O Lord, despite the dreariness of this day, we find bright hope in you as we acknowledge you and thank you for this day, this time, this place, and this good food and fellowship. Thank you for blessing our lives this day in every way. Amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Butch and Casey. You know, Butch has returned from Florida, and I was asking him if he was enjoying our nice, warm Midwest spring. And I note from his reflection, he already caught on to the fact that the warm has not come yet. Our sponsor this month is Hartman Associates, and we welcome them very much for being the sponsor. And again, if you're interested in sponsoring for a month, please contact the office. They'll be happy to help you out. We have no visiting Rotarians. If you have a guest, would you please bring them to the mic and introduce them?
President Chair and fellow Rotarians, please welcome Nick Camp, Senior Operations Analyst with the Highland Group.
Welcome, Nick.
President Sharon, I'd like to introduce my son, Jonathan, graduate of St. Francis de Sales, and also he can put on his resume that he's a graduate of Indiana University as of last weekend.
Congratulations, Jonathan. And congratulations to you too, Eric. That's one off the dole.
President Sharon, I brought with me 3 members of our team at the Alzheimer's Association today. Lori Micah is our development director. Pam Myers is our brand new program director. And Karen Moore is our signature events coordinator. Thank you.
Welcome, Lori, Pam, and Karen. This would be a great time to check into your social media. Check in and let them know that you are at the Rotary Club of Toledo's Monday meeting. And once you've done that, I encourage you to please give yourself the gift of Rotary for an hour and shut your phones down. A little polio update. For the year 2018, we only have 8 cases this year, and the good news is in the last week there were no reported cases. Wondering where you will be on May 19th. Hopefully you'll be at the district conference, which is going to be held this weekend at the Renaissance Hotel. May 19th is the day that the Toledo City Council has designated Rotary Day. So District Governor Deb Cheney accepted an award from our new mayor, and the proclamation declared that May 19th is going to be Rotary Day. So when you have a moment on May 19th, stop and reflect on the fact that you belong to one of the most prestigious and giving groups in the world today. Cindy Kerr is here with us today to introduce 2 new members, Jeff Hassan and Haley Gronemeyer. Did I say it right? Gronemeyer, almost. Cindy.
Good morning, and it is a privilege to introduce 2 friends of mine. So first with Jeff. Jeff came to Toledo in May of 2017 as the general manager of the Renaissance Toledo Downtown Hotel, Brimhouse Restaurant, and the Heights Rooftop Bar. He is married to his lovely wife, Carrie, for 23 years, and his children are Nicholas, who is a junior, and Jack, a 6th grader at Anthony Wayne schools. Jeff is a native of Ohio, growing up in Salina, just 120 miles south of here. He attended Johnson & Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island, where he received his bachelor's and master's degrees. In his 25-plus year career in hospitality, he has lived with his wife in the following 12 cities. So here's the list: Cleveland, Dayton, St. Louis, Columbus, Winston-Salem, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Fort Lauderdale, Atlanta, Melbourne, Houston, and now Toledo. And she's still married to him after all those years. Jeff was a Rotarian previously in Atlanta with the Rotary Club of North Lake, which is Tucker, Georgia. His hobbies include golfing at Stone Oak Country Club, sports, reading a good James Patterson novel, photography, and the latest IPA, which introduced to the market. Jeff's pet peeves include tardiness and slow drivers in the passing lane. Welcome, Jeff, to Toledo Rotary. Haley Grandmeyer was born and raised in Toledo and is an alumni of St. Joe's, Sylvania, and on to graduate from St. Ursula Academy. After graduating from high school, she attended Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, where she earned her Bachelor's of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies with concentrations in political science and mass communication. Haley started her career in hospitality in Scottsdale, Arizona at a 4-diamond luxury boutique hotel. She started in the food and beverage and worked her way up into sales and marketing discipline. After spending 10 years in Scottsdale, she moved back to the Toledo area where she married her husband Max and welcomed their daughter Madeline, who is now 5 years old. Haley has worked as the Director of Sales and Marketing for the Park inn Radisson Hotel, Quail Hollow Resort in Concord, Ohio, and now the Renaissance Toledo Downtown Hotel. So when you have a sales event, you're probably going to talk to Haley first. Okay, Haley was the first employee hired at the Renaissance, so she and I have been working together for a couple of years now and had the privilege of bringing the hotel to the Toledo market with much success. Haley and her family currently live in Luna Pier, Michigan, and loves to spend their summers boating on their antique Lyman boat. Haley's passion for travel has taken her to 4 continents, and she loves to visit her husband's home country of Lebanon whenever the schedule allows. Haley was previously a member of the Toledo Rotary back in 2015, the Chardon Rotary in 2016, and is now looking forward to getting involved here at the Toledo Club, and has already volunteered to serve on the Itzeball Committee for next year. So welcome to Haley to the Toledo Rotary.
Thank you, Cindy, for sharing the gift of Rotary, and to our friends at the Renaissance, thanks for hosting us this weekend. We look forward to being there this weekend, the district conference. At the district conference, we are going to be having Kids Against Hunger on Saturday, May 19th at the Renaissance. You do not have to be registered for the conference. You can come and participate in the program of Kids Against Hunger. This is the food pack that we'll be doing, but actually this year we're going to be doing it in conjunction with many other clubs and visitors to the area. So please, there's sign-up sheets outside. Sign up for May 19th, Kids Against Hunger. Also want to remind you that immediately following today's meeting, we'll be hosting another community conversation concerning our transformational projects. This is a good opportunity for you to have a voice in the direction of the club when it comes to transformational projects. So we're going to be having it today right after the meeting, and then next week it'll be an 11 o'clock before the meeting. Mike Noble. Mike, do you have an announcement for us?
Can you guys hear me?
There you go.
All right, thank you. All right, so just a quick update and some housekeeping on the Toledo bonus ride that's happening on May 31st. Just to give anybody some context that's not familiar with it yet, it's an international service project that's supported by our district, and it's kicking off the bike tour that has members of the district riding from club to club where they're being hosted, all right? And the May 31st day is the Toledo Club's opportunity to host the clubs in the rest of the district. So we're doing a breakfast that we're kicking off on the 31st. It's a Thursday morning at 8 a.m. Excuse me. So it's a really cool ride we got planned. It's 7.5 miles. It's a loop along the river, all right? You're starting in Middle Grounds Park, and you're riding down the Riverwalk, and then you're going over the Craig Street Bridge, and you're coming back over the the high-level bridge. It's going to be really cool. And riders can ride anytime from 9 to 2. There's a new way you can get involved. We're getting the handlebars donated to us. So you can take the handlebars out at 12:30, and it's the same deal. We're asking riders to pledge to raise $50, or they can donate the $50 themselves. If you pledge to do it, what you're doing is asking friends and family to sponsor you. So they're putting up the $50 for you, but it's your job to organize that. So how do you actually get the money in? Well, you can go through the rotarymesa.org website, and if you click at the top, you can click on Bike Tour and then Donate. And there they have instructions where you can send a check in and who to make the money out to. And there's also a PayPal link. You can make the contribution right there. At the front, we've got, at the sign-up table, we've got the registration forms, and stapled to the back of it is the sponsor form, where you can keep track of who's sponsoring you. And they've got the information right there where to send the check in as well. So, again, this is the Toledo Club's opportunity to host the district, and it's for a really great cause to send medical and equipment supplies abroad. Thank you.
So, Mike, just hang on real quick here. So just to be sure, we are the host for the 8 a.m. breakfast. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then will we be also hosting a lunch?
So the lunch is going to be hosted not by the Toledo Club. It's from some members in the district that have some Little Caesars pizzas that they're going to be donating at cost for us.
Okay, and then the handlebar bike ride will be available at 12:30?
Yes, so it's the same deal. It's $50 for a seat on the handlebar, and that's a new addition, and it's the same deal. If you come and show up that day, I imagine that people won't be sponsoring your ride for the handlebar. I imagine you'll be making that contribution yourself. If you come that day, then we'll get you registered with the registration form, and we'll have the squares for you to make the contribution with a credit card or help you do it right through the Mesa website.
And we don't have to ride the whole 7 miles, right?
That's correct. Now, there's an incentive, too. We've got some raffle items that have been donated to us. For instance, we've got a Kango gift card, amongst many others. Each time you complete the 7.5-mile loop, you'll receive a raffle ticket.
All right, Mike, one last question. Are we riding the handlebar for 7 miles?
The handlebar route will be slightly different. We don't think it's going to make it over the high-level bridge. So now,
all right.
Thank you, Sharon. I got one more thing. It's the ribbon around my finger I've been forgetting to tie, and that's that. I really need some help with the head count who's coming to breakfast. It's free. Anybody can come. It's your opportunity to interact with other members in the district. But in order for us to know how much money we should be spending, I owe them a head count by the end of this week. I got some forms I'm just going to go ahead and bring around all the tables so you guys can pass around. I got some pens, too. If you could just indicate if you're coming to breakfast, if you're coming to lunch, it'll be really helpful for us for planning this whole thing.
All right. Thank you, Mike, very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
So since we are hosting this event, I know I will be there at 7:30 in the morning. Hopefully I'm not going to be by myself. I know we all have our day jobs, but if you're going to be, particularly if you work in the downtown area, you can come by the Rotary Lodge there at the Middle Grounds Metro Park and support the kickoff of this, and then maybe perhaps come back and I'll meet you on the handlebar at 12:30 maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so if you can make it down, that'd be a great opportunity to network and, as Mike says, meet with other district Rotarians. Another opportunity, Andy Fox. Can you come to the floor, Mike, with an announcement?
Thank you. This is just a reminder, just like Mike said, what are you going to be doing on May 31st? What are you going to do on June 2nd? So Saturday evening, we have the inaugural Rotary on the River going on the Sandpiper. There are 100 passengers allowed on this boat, so registration is key. We are focusing primarily on the under 40 audience, in particular for our guests. However, we would like the support and attendance from all members if we are able. We would like to pack out this boat as fast as humanly possible. As of this morning, including myself, we have 0 signups. So we got some work to do. If you have any questions, it is $25 per person. We would love for you to bring your spouse, significant others, invite anybody you can, and come have a great evening on June 2nd at 8:30.
Thank you, Andy. And thanks for our members who have worked really hard to put all these things together. So just a reminder that on the 31st, you have an opportunity to be rolling on your bicycles, and on June 2nd, you can be rolling on the river. So come on and join. It'll be a good time. At this time, I'm going to invite Julia to come up and introduce our program for today.
Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to speak. I think since I've been a member since 1999, I think this is the third time I've had the honor of doing this, and trying to be relaxed doing this. It's a tough crowd, so thank you very much. Thank you for inviting Dr. Isaac Schiefer and me to speak to you today about what's happening locally in the fight to end Alzheimer's and related dementias. Oh, there we go. So pretty impressive statistics there, unfortunately. Very profound statistics that we share with you today. The facts and figures that you just saw flash across the screen are national in scope, but things really aren't that different in Northwest Ohio. Our chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, one of 78 across the country, serves these 24 counties in Northwest Ohio. And we offer professional programs and services, staff to the community, including social workers and nurses, as well as dozens of volunteers who are trained support group facilitators in every single one of our 24 counties. And our goal is to help families through their journey with this disease. And this journey, I'm sure everyone in this room is acquainted, knows, or is a family member of someone who has suffered dementia. You know how profound of an impact it has on the entire family. It's a family disease. So one person may be diagnosed, but it impacts every person in that family. And, you know, it's a long journey for a lot of people. It can be short, but actually folks with Alzheimer's and related dementias can live as long as 20 years. So all the services that we provide as an association are free of charge, and they're available to both the individual with dementia early in their journey, but also to the caregivers throughout that period of time that they're providing care, whether it's at home or have their loved one placed in long-term care, memory care unit. And I've got a list here of the different types of services that we provide, but just to share with you, last week I was talking to one of our volunteers, and she said she got involved because she knows it's called the helpline, but her family calls it the lifeline. Her mom was taking care of her dad, and one night, having chest pain, was afraid to call 911 because she didn't know what would happen to her husband if they took her in the ambulance. And she called instead our 800 number, which is available 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. And they actually walked her through the process of getting her husband settled down in bed so she could actually sleep. And she wasn't having a heart attack, it was an anxiety attack. Happens all the time. It is very stressful on families, and particularly a spouse, caregiver, whoever that person with dementia lives with. So our mission at the Alzheimer's Association is that continued commitment to serving families until there's our treatments and ultimately a cure, because there aren't really treatments at this point. But we also want to make sure that individuals are educated on healthy brains as well. But ultimately, our vision is a world without Alzheimer's. So one of the most common questions we get at the Alzheimer's Association is about the types of dementia. And most individuals with dementia actually do have Alzheimer's. While about 10% of people have something a little bit different, they have vascular dementia, typically caused by a stroke. And care and support services through the Alzheimer's Association are available to anyone regardless of the type of dementia. So no hesitation if you don't know what type of dementia a family member, a neighbor, a friend has. Our services are still available to whomever is dealing with dementia. And also, if you have a loved one or friend who's experiencing some memory changes and you're concerned, it's always very important to have a neurological assessment done. You can usually start with a family physician, and then depending upon what that family physician or that assessment outcome is, then you'll be referred to a neurologist for advanced assessment, and that neurologist should always refer the family to the Alzheimer's Association for those social supports that they will need to plan and prepare for the journey ahead over the next period of time while they're caring for their loved one. So just as a further note, and Isaac will get more into this, but unfortunately Alzheimer's is the only one of the top 10 diseases leading to death that does not have treatment or cure. So we are working really hard toward that end and very involved with research. We are the third largest funder of Alzheimer's research in the world, behind the government of China, and the number one funder is the United States government through the National Institutes of Health. So I would like to congratulate at this point Dr. Schiefer, who has just recently announced, after receiving a smaller grant back in 2015 from the Alzheimer's Association to advance his research at the University of Toledo College of Pharmacy, that he is now the recipient of a $2 million National Institutes of Health grant to advance the research he's going to share with you today. What's really astounding about this is Dr. Schiefer is one of a very small fraction of individuals who are funded by the National Institutes of Health for research under the age of 35. So he is our very own local whiz kid, if you will. No offense. He's not really a kid, but he is under 35, and we're just so impressed and privileged to have him right here in our community. But before I turn things over to Isaac, I would be remiss in not mentioning that anyone can get involved with research. You don't need to be a scientist, and it's free. So through the Alzheimer's Association, we have a program called Trial Match, and you don't need to have a history in your family of the disease. It's regardless of age, ethnicity, physical health, anything. You can become a member of Trial Match by going to our website, which is alz.org/trialmatch. Sign up free of charge, and then you'll be in the database to be matched with clinical trials that match your region, your area, and also your particular profile. And I encourage you to do it. I'm a member of Trial Match myself, and it's very interesting at least to see what's going on in the world of research and how other people are able to contribute data about themselves to a variety of different types of research studies. So I'm going to share another brief video with you and then turn it over to Isaac.
The first person to survive Alzheimer's disease is out there. They're going to hold on to everything the disease steals away. That smile they can't hide. That dance class they love. Every single piece of them is going to make it through. And the Alzheimer's Association is going to make it happen by funding research, advancing public policy, and spurring scientific breakthroughs. And by providing local support to those living with the disease and their caregivers, we're easing the burden for all those facing it until we accomplish our goal. Alzheimer's disease has devastated millions of lives, but that's all going to change when we reach the first survivor. But we won't get there without you. Visit alz.org to join the fight.
So may I present to you Dr. Isaac Schiefer.
Thank you, Julia, for the very kind introduction. Very humbling. Can we go to the first slide here? So, as she mentioned, I'm an assistant professor at the University of Toledo in the Department of Medicinal and Biological Chemistry. My office and lab are both on UT's health science campus, although we do use equipment and stuff on the main campus. First of all, thanks. I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to come before all of the pillars of the Toledo business community and talk about a little bit of my research. So I'll give a quick personal introduction. I find that this helps, especially when speaking to community audiences, to kind of let you guys know that I am one of you. I'm a Buckeye. I realize not everyone in this room necessarily is a Buckeye, but I am a Buckeye. So I grew up in Bucyrus, Ohio. I played football and basketball. There's me, the only championship Bucyrus basketball has had probably since 1968. So my wife is a floor pharmacist at UTMC. She's in the cardiovascular unit there. And her and I live in south of Perrysburg. And we have two daughters, Emma Rose and Piper Lynn. And we actually have one more on the way that's due in this next fall. So needless to say, with two daughters under the age of 4 and a 5-month pregnant wife at home, I'm just relieved to be out of the house. So here's a little bit of a personal introduction. So I actually did my undergraduate here at UT. I came to study pharmacy. In high school, I had focused on football and basketball. I really hadn't focused on studies very much, and I wanted to know how I could make money, and they said, well, go into pharmacy. So I did about 2 years into pharmacy and realized I didn't like working as a pharmacist. I didn't want to do it. So I went to my advisors, and they said, what's your favorite class? And I said, well, pharmacology and medicinal chemistry, organic chemistry is what I really like. And they said, well, why don't you try out research? So I got in a lab there, Bill Messer, William S. Messer. So he runs a drug discovery lab for Alzheimer's. He actually got a drug into phase 1 clinical trials for Alzheimer's about 10 years ago. And I fell in love with bench research. There's a nice connection between playing sports and bench research. The thing that I like most about it was in football, we always had a saying, leave it all on the field, right? Never wanting to look back 20 years later and wonder how good could we have been if we just worked a little bit harder, right? And I find as soon as I got into bench research that the more experiments you do in science, the more success you have. So you can outwork people in science very easily, which I fell in love with because you don't have to be the smartest. You just can outwork people. And that's what I started to do. And eventually, if you work 90 hours a week in the lab for 4 or 5 years, you actually become one of the smartest, right? So that's nice. So I actually got world-class training at the University of Illinois, Chicago. The professor I was with there in medicinal chemistry is one of the best in the country. And then that got me a postdoctorate position with Rick Silverman at Northwestern. So Rick Silverman is actually the creator of Lyrica. So he's got a big building named after himself up there in Evanston. And although I signed a 2-year contract with him 11 months after I started, I wrote back to UT because my wife had got a job here and said I'd like to come back. And they looked at my resume and said, come on back. So path to the clinic. So scientists must be open to critique, right? So I've given about a dozen talks to the community in the last few years, and I've gotten several critiques from the community. And basically what they tell me is do less science in my talks and make it more that people could understand. So for this forum, I'm going to throw a little bit of science in, but I'm more going to focus on the path to the clinic for a molecule from my lab. And I'm going to show you where we're at on that journey and where we need to go. That sounds good. So in my lab, to develop a drug, we have drug discovery, preclinical efforts, and then phase 1 clinical trials are in humans. You have tens of volunteers. It's looking for safety in humans. Phase 2, you're looking at escalated dose safety, but also some measures of pharmacokinetics and efficacy. And then phase 3, you're looking at efficacy. Does it actually work for what you say it does before you get it approved? Main inflection points are the IND submission after preclinical research, investigational new drug application, and then the new drug application for FDA approval. So in academic drug discovery, really everything on the left side here is what we focus on. It's what I'd like to focus on in my lab. Okay, so I'm actually going to walk through my lab's finances. I know everyone here is probably pretty savvy with money. I don't have really very much business training, but I don't mind showing dollar signs because I'm funded at a public institution, meaning Freedom of Information Act means that you can ask anything about the money that we use at UT, as far as I'm concerned. I'm very transparent in how we use money. So I was brought on in 2013 as a research assistant professor, non-tenure track. I was brought in to do mainly teaching, but they did reserve 25% time for research. They gave me about 1,000 square foot lab space and $15,000 over 3 years for supplies. And after I was there for about 3 months, I got a seed grant. So we call these seed grants because you have an idea and you want to do proof of concept work around it. So I got a seed grant from the American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy to do research over 1 year to make a small library of molecules, test whether or not they're neuroprotective, and then test if they can improve memory in mice. Okay, so I'm not going to bore you guys with too much of the synthesis, but I have to show a little bit of this because one of the things that really grabbed a hold of me and got me excited when I joined the lab was the idea that in my fume hood, I could create molecules that have never been made in the history of mankind. Right? I would say in the history of the universe, but I don't. That's unknown, right? I tell my kids this constantly in my lab to try and get them excited about the fact that things they're making have never been made by anyone. It's a really exciting prospect to me. And I like to show that, so when we do synthesis, we have incentives. So if you get more than 90% yield on any of your reactions, you get to ring this bell that I stole off my dad's Chris Craft. And I can hear it from down the hall when they ding it, so it makes me happy. Right? Okay, so we made so I didn't have graduate students while I was a research assistant professor. So I did all this in the lab by myself, more or less. I had some undergrads help me out, but during the school year, they don't have time for it. So this is our model of memory. It's called step-through passive avoidance. So we have this acrylic box with a light and a dark side. If you put mice in the light side, they'll adventure around it, and then eventually they'll go in the dark side. Okay, this is part of their natural tendency. The mouse that's out in the field in the light gets eaten by a hawk, and they don't if they're in the dark, right? But we actually give a mild aversive shock to the mouse when they go in the dark side. Okay, then we wait 24 hours. I'll just go. We wait 24 hours, and then if you put the mouse back in the light side again, they adventure around and they don't go in the dark side. They've learned that there is something bad that happens to them when they go in the dark side. If you induce a memory deficit in those mice by giving them a model of Alzheimer's disease, something like that, they don't remember and they just keep going in the dark side. So we can measure this as latency to go into the dark side, how long it takes for them to go from the light to the dark side. And generally, it's a yes or no answer. Either they remember or they don't. So here's the timeline for the test that we do. First, we habituate. We make sure that indeed the mice do go from the light to the dark side without shocking them. And then we give our drug. And all these doses were kind of what I figured would be acceptable doses for activity. This class of molecules had never been studied in mice for the brain, so we had no idea of dosing and timing and all of that. I made educated guesses at all of it, but educated guesses, most importantly. So we give it 60 or 2 hours, or 60 minutes, or an hour and 20, or 2 hours prior to training. Then we give scopolamine. So scopolamine is a muscarinic antagonist, which means it blocks memory formation, cholinergic memory formation, which is the type of memory that's depleted in Alzheimer's disease patients. And then 24 hours, and then we train them 30 minutes after the scopolamine. Then 24 hours later, we test if they remember that they're going to get shocked or not. Okay. So here we have. So we measure this as latency to enter the dark compartment. We cut it off at 5 minutes. If they're on the light side for 5 minutes and don't go to the dark, we assume they're not going to go in the dark side. So without drug and without scopolamine, 8 of the 9 mice stay in the light side for 5 minutes. They remember they're going to get shocked, and they don't go. Right? One of them was a risk taker. I think in 60 seconds he went in. That's we call that variability. When we give scopolamine, we induce a significant deficit. So 8 of the 9 mice in the first 60 seconds will run into the dark side. They completely forget that they're going to get shocked, right? And this is a validated model in neuroscience. When we give our drug at increasing doses 1 hour before, we see a few data points higher, but it's not statistically different than either the positive or negative controls. But then when we give our drug 2 hours out, especially at our 20 milligrams per kilogram dose, we see a complete reversal of the memory deficit, right? So it reverses cholinergic memory deficits, which are centralized, well known to be centralized in the hippocampus, which is the main part of where memory is being destroyed in Alzheimer's disease patients. And this is a brand new activity for this class of compounds, which we refer to as first-in-class efficacy, okay? And the reason I have fire is because that makes it a hot class of compounds. And when it's a hot class of compounds, what happens? People start throwing money at it. So UT, in light of these results, UT promoted me tenure track in the spring of 2015 and gave me an additional startup for 5 years. And about 3 months later, Alzheimer's Association gave me bridge funding. So this is to do follow-up. So the seed funding gave us our initial proof of concept. Now the bridge funding lets us fill in some of the holes to convince someone to give us a lot of money to develop the class as a whole for Alzheimer's disease. And we did a lot of mechanistic work with the Alzheimer's Association money. I'm not going to show that because, like I said, I handle critiques well. So I'll just show you some of the most important pieces that you can understand fairly easily. So here's our drug, IS-141. By the way, the number is IS, my initials, the initials of the person who made it in academic drug discovery, IS-first notebook, page 41. That's what that number stands for, if you ever wondered. So we give this at 20 mg per kg. Either intraperitoneally down here by injection or by oral gavage. You actually inject it straight into the stomach via the throat. And then we measure the drug in the plasma in the brain 1 hour, 2 hours, and 12 hours after administration. You can see intraperitoneal are in red, PO is in yellow, and basically we see the drug 12 hours after administration. We see it in the brain more or less as much as we see it in the plasma. It's got favorable PK characteristics. And you don't have to take my word for it. I would cite the scientific article, but nowadays we don't cite things. We just look at the Twitter post. So this blew up on Twitter last week. I think we had 3 retweets, which in science is, Nobel Prize worthy. But we just published this recently. So we obtained this data, most of it 3 years ago, right? And I'll explain to you why it takes so long to publish in instances like mine here in a second. So that's published. And this is the molecule that we were talking about. This is a neuroprotection. But now I'm going to show you guys some new stuff that's actually included in the patent but hasn't been published yet. Right? So it's a little bit more exciting. So that was our first compound, the one improves memory. Here's one of our more recent ones. So at a lower dose, we see much greater neuroprotection, which means it's a much better drug candidate, presumably, as long as there's not some toxicity associated with the increased efficacy. And then here are some of our PK stuff. So here, remember in the first one we did 1 hour, 2 hours, and 12 hours. Now we do more of a traditional pharmacokinetic analysis. So we look at the mice 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, much closer time points to administration with this new drug. So here we have after oral administration, the amount in the brain. Here we can actually see, so in pharmacokinetics, there's an absorption phase where the drug's getting to its peak concentration, and then there's an elimination phase, first order decay. And that's what we see really nice in the brain of this one. When we give IP, it hits the absorptions much quicker because it's given intraperitoneally, and we see a beautiful first order decay curve. One of my undergraduate students got this data this last spring, and I was really happy with it. They did a nice job. So we did follow-up analysis with all the bridge funding, and here we are in 2018. My Alzheimer's Association grant expired in late, it's a 2-year grant, so it expired in late 2017, and then, boom, my R01 hit. So now we get $1.25 million over the next 5 years to develop this class, full-scale drug discovery for Alzheimer's disease. And it's really exciting. Some things I would note in this is we filed the patent in late 2017. So in drug discovery especially, intellectual property it's a lifeblood. So there have been many compounds that maybe could have cured Alzheimer's disease or cancer or other things, and they get shelved because they don't have enough intellectual property life left to return on investment for development. So we waited. I was very cognizant about the fact that I must wait to publish any of this and to patent it as long as possible until I had enough money in hand to really develop it properly. So we filed the patent in 2017, late 2017. It's undergoing prosecution right now. And then we finally published on it here in May, right? So notice a lot of that data I got back in 2014. And what I want to note is I'm very thankful for the Alzheimer's Association, not only for giving me the money for that follow-up, but there was a time there where I wasn't publishing. I was tenure track. I wasn't publishing. And, in academia, they push you when you're tenure track to publish. It's publish or perish. And having that money kind of got them off my back. It gave some sort of validation to the fact that they had given me a job, right? So that's where the Alzheimer's Association money really came in handy, and I'm extremely grateful for that. So really quickly, the goals of the R01. So we're going to rigorously evaluate the class of compounds we're developing. So in drug discovery, you need to think about process chemistry. How do we make kilograms of this, and identify all the side products, carry out additional mechanism studies, disease state efficacy. So far, our efficacy has been in a validated model, but it's a crude model of cholinergic memory deficit. We want to put these into actual Alzheimer's mouse models that have amyloid beta plaques and tangles. Related classes with related mechanism of action work in those models, which is why NIH gave me money to keep developing them, because they know this is likely to work. And then we also do escalating dose, acute, and chronic toxicity. If we've never had these molecules in the history of mankind, we have no idea about the toxicity and efficacy. We know it doesn't hurt the mice that we gave it to for the memory studies and the PK studies, and it doesn't hurt the cells we give it to, but we need to do much more testing to make sure it's safe before it gets into people. And this is all in an effort to de-risk project advancement to an investigational new drug application, an IND enabling studies. So in the path to the clinic, here is where we are. The R01 will fund this piece. So this is refining our chemical structure, looking at disease state efficacy, PK, and toxicology. It's funded for 5 years. This work could technically be done as fast as 3 years. It's a 3 to 5 year window. From there, this is an ideal pathway. We'll develop a UT-based spinoff based on the intellectual property of the underlying grant underlying patent that we just submitted. And then it would go to IND enabling PK and toxicology. So this is, we do toxicity in 2 species and at least 1 primate species. We do, and this is funded by NIH, venture capital, angel investors, or associations. Alzheimer's Association and Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation both fund this type of work. So this is basically checking all the boxes that the FDA needs before they'll let you give it to people. And it's interesting, if anyone's never, I don't suppose anyone here has ever filed the paperwork, to file an IND application, you don't need to give any evidence of efficacy. All the FDA cares about is toxicity. They assume that the efficacy is there, or else somebody wouldn't be paying to advance it into the clinic. All they wanted you to do is prove that it's going to be safe when you give it to people. And And then, so that spinoff, along with some support either from venture capital, angel investor, or nonprofits, gets into phase 1 for safety and PK in humans. And then the idea here would be to have to partner with a large pharma at this point, or be completely acquired. Now, in the academic drug discovery paradigm, this pharma acquisition can actually get moved up to before the IND, to where they can do the IND enabling tox and stuff like that. But to me, this is the ideal point because it stays in my hands longer, so that I can make sure that it doesn't get sat on a shelf somewhere. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank everyone for your attention and give a couple brief acknowledgments. My couple grad students, Ethel, Austin, and Dr. Kevin Nash, now he's at Rovient Pharmaceuticals, did most of the work. I have several undergraduates in my lab that do the work. I get money from AACP, Alzheimer's Association. I actually have another couple. I just got another grant funded from National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, and I'm a co-I on another NIA, National Institute on Aging grant. And then my University of Toledo for providing the resources. I told them when they hired me that I was hoping that I could give them a return on investment for what they gave me, and I've done that now. So I hope they'll give me tenure next year. I don't think there are any trustees in the audience. No. Okay, but thank you very much for your attention.
We do have time for questions today, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Schiefer.
Yeah, Reyes Chaudhry, I'm a physician. First of all, it's a great talk. And second, I've sent dozens of patients to Alzheimer's Association and do a great job. My question is, all the major research from Novartis, Eli Lilly, Merck, they have tried the molecules for Alzheimer's treatment. They've all failed.
Yes.
And they have lost billions. And what kind of confidence you have in this molecule that it will succeed?
So it's a great question. So the question is, with all the failure in Alzheimer's disease drug discovery over the last 10 years, really, and the billions of dollars left, how can we have any confidence for a molecule like I'm making? That's a good question. This is actually something that I had in my talks earlier, and I got rid of because it gets fairly scientific. But the molecules that have failed are all aimed at amyloid beta, which is the hallmark toxic protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. Basically, amyloid beta aggregates very easily, but it's essential. Small amounts of it are essential for normal brain function, and that's something that a lot of people didn't appreciate until just recently. So people have developed therapies that are trying to lower the amount of amyloid beta, and they actually found in a lot of those that lower amyloid beta, they increase the rate of cognitive decline. So they make it worse because amyloid beta in small amounts is actually essential for brain function. And the other problem is amyloid beta causes neurotoxicity. And once enough neurons are dead, getting rid of the thing that killed them doesn't bring them back to life. So this compound class, it's actually targeted at nitric oxide and cyclo-GMP. So it's a nitric oxide mimetic. And in mice, not in humans yet, but in mice, basically molecules that act through this pathway have been shown to improve memory and have some effects on amyloid beta and increase a BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, in the presence of significant pathological burden. So basically, they improve memory without changing the levels of the thing that's killing the neurons. And that's a favorable paradigm because when we get in the clinic, significant neurodegeneration has already happened before we give before you see symptoms in the clinic. The pathology is already, up and going at full scale. So that's why I have a little bit of optimism. It's because it's a different mechanism, and it's a mechanism not focused on the amyloid beta, but it's focused on neurotransmission, increasing neurotransmission.
Thank you.
Very good question. Thank you.
From a lay perspective, is my understanding today the medicine that neurologists have can slow the process down. Your research, as I think I understood what you said, is you can reverse that, and you're creating molecules that will create a drug that will reverse Alzheimer's and dementia, where the mind comes back and regenerates the cells?
So so most scientists are very guarded when we use words like reverse. So, let me say this. I think with our class of molecules, if we develop them properly and get the right one, that we can get to the brain properly with the proper, characteristics, that we could give it, and the memory will get better. People's memories will get better. Their short-term memory will improve. I don't think that necessarily means that there is. So, it's tricky. So neurons technically don't grow much after a certain age. Right? But there are also glial cells and astrocytes that kind of clean up things around neurons and have important roles in neurotransmission that we can help. So we can basically strengthen them a little bit to help the processes. So I think our molecule will improve, will help with improvement of memory. But I wouldn't say. I don't know how to quantify. So if you say reverse, I mean, if tumor is growing, you give something, the tumor gets smaller. That's reversing. I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where you can completely rebuild neuronal networks that are degraded to the degree that we see in Alzheimer's, unless you're giving a drug, in your early 50s, because some of these pathologies are going on for decades before we see any clinical features.
So you're making molecules that will evolve into drugs?
Yes, trying to. Thank you for your question. It's good.
I'm going to take the mic over to him for a second.
Or he's
coming
come
to
over.
me then. Never mind. I was going to walk to you. Hey, I'm curious. So you mentioned phase 1 is kind of the ideal time for you to be acquired by big pharma.
Yeah.
Who determines when that happens? Do you maintain control to hang on that long?
Okay, so this is one of the great things. I can say a great thing about UT. This is one of the great things about UT is, so at UIC where I did grad school, intellectual property is by default, it's 60% owned by UIC and 40% by the inventors. At Toledo, it's 50-50. So, and generally, if you show them that you have an exit plan, they'll give you authority to make decisions on the development. So with a 50-50 split, I have a large say in what happens. And getting money to what Steve Snyder at UT's lead counsel, what he likes to see is investment. He likes to see dollar signs going towards your inventions, because if he sees that, then he thinks you know what you're doing, and he generally gives you some leeway, which is nice. It's one of the nice things. UT has very favorable terms as far as inventorship for academic researchers. Thank you.
Yeah, at this point in time, do you think an earlier diagnosis of maybe the people that have pre-Alzheimer's, those of us that are sitting here with beta amyloid in our brains, will be the successful thing that will change the course of this? Because most of the drugs that have been tried that look pretty good theoretically haven't changed much.
Yes, sir. So that's a good question, and the scientific community is actually more split on that than. So if you would ask anyone that 10 years ago, they would have said yes. If we can determine the amount of amyloid beta deposition early enough, we'll be able to give therapies to switch it around. But I've actually seen quite a bit of data where. So one of the perplexing things about Alzheimer's disease is you'll get people who don't have any cognitive dysfunction at all, and you open them up, and they'll have significant amyloid beta deposition, right? And so there's outliers in the system, which is why I think treatment might be possible, because these people's brains are still working well. So the number one, if I usually say this in my talks, the number one thing that you could take away from this talk, although I didn't hit on it very hard, is diet and exercise. If you don't want to get Alzheimer's disease, diet and exercise. The strongest statistical evidence currently is that diet and exercise and actually higher education all have to do with a less prevalence of Alzheimer's disease. So I'm sorry, did I answer your question? I know I get off on tangents. That's good, thank you.
Julia, I have one question for you. Can you tell us how many people in the regional area are affected by this disease?
So in the 24 counties that we serve, 38,000 people have Alzheimer's or related dementias. And of those 38,000 people, there are approximately 100,000 caregivers. But I can tell you right here in Lucas County, we could fill the Huntington Center for a hockey game more than once with folks who have Alzheimer's and related dementia. So it's profound impact. As I mentioned earlier, I would be surprised if if there's a single one of us in this room who doesn't know someone, whether it's friend, neighbor, or family member who's been impacted.
Thank you, Julia and Dr. Schiefer, for this great production. As a thank you for this presentation today, a donation will be made in your name to the Polio Plus campaign. And also, Dr. Schiefer, first of all, congratulations on your wonderful grant and the research that you do. But also accept this gift of the Historical Tales of Toledo, written by one of our members and underwritten by another one of my members. Thank you so much. So thank you. Also a reminder to everybody that Rotary International Convention is also coming up June 23rd through the 27th. It's in Toronto, Canada, just over 4 hours away. So if you're considering going, let us know that you're going, because we're also trying to put a group together for dinner. We always have a lot of fun when we get together. And one of the reasons why you should go is you really will come across and meet so many people throughout the world, and you'll learn that we're basically all the same. We're all fighting water issues, poverty issues, maternal and education issues. So if you're thinking about going, let us know at the office know that you're going, and we definitely will all get together and hook up. It's a lot of fun. Next week, our own Rotarian, Brian Epstein, will be talking to us about Next Tech Ohio. And then after the meeting today, we actually have 3 meetings going on. Community Services is in the North Cape room. Investment is in the Presque Isle room. And then we have the Transformational Community Conversation going on in the Waynesfield room. Chuck, we missed you last week and welcome you back. How about a little chuckle for us?
Actually, I do have days when I feel like and behave like mouse number 9, but for the most part, life is pretty simple for me. There are only 2 things I need to worry about. Either I'm well or I'm sick. If I'm well, then there's nothing to worry about. But if I'm sick, there are only 2 things to worry about. Either I will get well or I will die. If I get well, there's nothing to worry about. But if I die, there are only 2 things to worry about. Either I will go to heaven or hell. If I go to heaven, there's nothing to be worried about. But if I go to hell, I'll be so damn busy shaking hands with my fellow Rotarians that I won't have time to worry.
Oh, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. Folks, I encourage you to go out and make a difference in somebody's world today. We are adjourned. Fascinating.